Hey everybody, Kevin Walters here once again with Costa Rica Investment Properties. Today we've got a great interview with Fredrick Shiebel of ULB. Fredrick is a lawyer here in Costa Rica, but you do a lot of other things as well. You do property law, you do immigration and taxation, correct?
That's right. We have a small boutique law firm named ULB, or Unique Law and Business, and we focus our services primarily in real estate transactions, and we offer side services that always, or the majority of time, investors look for in Costa Rica, which are migration services, corporate law, and also everything that has to be involved with taxation.
Okay, well, there's the great introduction. So as I've mentioned to you before, when we've done some courses together, we have a lot of clients from North America that are looking to either invest or migrate or retire down here in Costa Rica. So because of you, our wonderful friends and clients, we have some questions that we're going to go over, but we're going to have the professionals answer them. So first question is, who can buy and invest property in Costa Rica?
It's a good question. Well, actually, everybody can come and buy property in Costa Rica and invest in Costa Rica.
So you don't need to be a citizen, a resident,
Don't
anything.
need a different from many other countries in Central America. You don't need to be a citizen. You don't have to have a residency or any family-related matters to actually be able to buy and invest property in Costa Rica. So if you decide in the future to apply for a residency, and so that's a whole other topic, but you don't actually need that in order to buy and invest in Costa Rica.
That's absolutely amazing. So that's great to hear. So that applies to all of you. So come on down. Next question we have, is it best to set up a corporation? This is a great question. And I know it changes. Is it best to set up a corporation or personal use versus investor use?
It's a great question, and it doesn't have a right or wrong answer.
Mhm.
It all depends on why does the client want to invest in Costa Rica. If the client wants to live in Costa Rica in that property, is he going to be close to the country for whenever basically you're going to need signatures with regards to this property or investment? What do I mean by that? For example, if somebody comes to Costa Rica to invest and is only going to come here to Costa Rica 2 or 3 times per year, and eventually there's a possibility to sell that property or to, I don't know, sign some lease agreement or anything that has to do with the property that requires a written signature, it's probably better to buy that property through a corporation. Now, owning through a corporation can, it involves additional yearly costs of obviously
Mhm.
maintaining that corporation active and in full compliance with Costa Rican regulations. However, it all depends on the amount or the extent of those services that this attorney that you eventually hire offers you and the ones that you actually want to buy. But there's no right or wrong answer. Just you must bear in mind that if you're gonna buy it on your personal behalf, you for eventual signatures or anything that you need, you'll need to be here. Something very important and one of the most important things to consider is liability purposes. If you're gonna buy a property for your personal use and you don't mind third parties knowing that you're the owner, it doesn't matter if you buy it on your personal behalf. Now, if you do not want anybody to know, or you just for liability purposes, you don't want to have that property on your personal behalf and be owned by a corporation, then it's obviously better to keep that aside and just buy it through a corporation.
Okay, quick question with a quick answer. What if we have somebody coming in from North America? They are going to want to do it through Airbnb, set it up as a business, so they would set up as a corporation. But if their plan 5 years down the road is to move down here, can they change it from a corporation to personal?
Okay. There's two answers to that question. The first of them will be, and I'm going back to the previous conversation that we were having. For liability purposes, if you're planning on renting your property out to third parties through online platforms or to some people that you know, for liability purposes, it's always recommended to own it through a corporation so that the owner of that property is the corporation, and anything that happens with the people using that property itself, it's kept under the corporation's umbrella. So no liabilities will be transferred to you as the final beneficiary of the corporation. And to answer specifically Kevin's question, um, yes, you can transfer that asset eventually to you if it's still if it's owned under a corporation and then you want to own it on your personal behalf. However, you will have to pay transfer taxes and closing costs and obviously attorney fees as well because
Okay.
it's a whole new transfer of the title of the property.
Fair enough. Okay. And then what everyone's going to ask me, so we're going to ask you, and you're going to tell them, what's it cost to set up a corporation? And we'll just make it simple, that it's a husband and wife or an individual setting up a corporation.
Okay, with that as example specific, which I think it's the easiest one, it all depends on what the attorney that you hire charges for incorporating a corporation. I'm gonna give you the example at our firm. We charge $750 for incorporating a new company, plus the incorporation costs or the taxes that you have to pay, which are around $140 more or less. So you'll end up paying 750 plus 140 dollars to incorporate a company. Now, that's just to incorporate. To keep that company active, which that's a question that people may ask themselves, to keep that company active on a yearly basis, you'll have to take into consideration, sorry, the the amount of or if that company is going to be active before the tax ministry or not. Just for existing, the every January you need to pay a corporate tax to the companies. That corporate tax is around $120 more or less. After this, you have to pay the education and culture stamp, which is around $11 or $12, which is paid on March, every March. And after that, there's two minimum, if the company is inactive, meaning it does not have a commercial activity before the tax ministry, which are two different declarations that you have to file on an annual basis. And obviously the cost of filing this declaration, it all depends on the attorneys that you hire. At our firm, for example, to give you a ballpark of those costs, each declaration is around $150 plus VAT. So these declarations are the UBO filing or final beneficiaries declaration and the inactive company declaration. That's the minimum that you will have to cover on a yearly basis to maintain a company active.
Yeah, and those prices are very fair. That's pretty much what most lawyers are doing for the corporations. And that was going to come up a little bit later, but we've kind of tackled that one already. Okay, this is a really big one. For those of you who have been thinking about buying in Mexico, okay, you have to keep in mind that Mexico, the majority of Mexico is called what's concession land. You do not own it. Okay, here in Costa Rica, percentage you can help me out with more, but there is a very small percentage of Costa Rica that is titled land, just like you would have in North America. If you purchase a home, a condominium, land, whatever it may be, you own that or your corporation owns that. Where we live in Jaco, and that's one of the main reasons that I started my business there 10 years ago, because it is titled land. 20 minutes south, 25 minutes north, we're not titled land, we're concession. But can you give everyone a brief description, a little bit more about concession land and titled land?
Sure. I wouldn't be able to tell a percentage of what amount of properties in Costa Rica are concession land or what are titled land. What I can tell you is the difference between one and the other. Titled land is what we call in English the fee simple title, right? So it's just when you own the property directly on your personal behalf or indirectly through a corporation. A concession land is a land that will always belong to the government, to the government of Costa Rica, but you can apply for the rights of use over a certain piece of property by paying a specific fee on an annual basis. There's one specific requirement that you must know, and it's that non-Costa Ricans cannot buy or can acquire the rights of use of these pieces of property that we call concession land if they are wanting to own it on 100%. What do I mean by this? The law of concessions in Costa Rica, basically the Maritime Land Zone law in specific, says that Costa Ricans need to own at least 51% of the rights of that concession land in order for a foreigner to have, rights over the land itself. So the foreigner will only be able to own 49% of those rights. So for example, if you have a piece of property and you are not Costa Rican and you wanna buy the rights of use for a certain period of time over this piece of property, you can easily, if you have a partner or somebody that you know in Costa Rica that might also want to have the rights over that piece of property, you can incorporate a company that will acquire the rights of over this property, and as the foreigner can own 49% and the Costa Rican can own 51%. And you can both jointly use the property and you can do whatever you want with the property as long as Costa Rican also have rights of that.
Let me ask you this. Myself and my wife are permanent residents with no restrictions. Can we purchase, or do we still have to have a naturalized citizen?
If you have the permanent residency in Costa Rica, you're able to apply for the permits before the municipality.
Perfect. And what we're talking about still is concession land, and not the very first question, who can buy and who cannot buy. This is the difference between title or fee simple in North America versus concession land. Okay, so closing costs. What are closing costs? I know that it's a mathematical equation, but I always try to tell my clients, like, oh, closing costs are so expensive. Well, your land taxes are very inexpensive, and closing costs are very inexpensive compared to other parts of the world here. I try to tell my clients 4%. Every single closing I've had with clients has always been less than 4%, but I try to protect it so there's no shock. Is that fair?
Yes, I think that 4% is a really conservative amount. Again, it all depends, and it can go up or it can go down according to what the attorney charges for the fees. There are many attorneys that break down their fees in plenty of different small services that they throw in a closing, and that the client might need after buying that property and closing on that property. But the minimum cost for closing property in Costa Rica are there's a 2.4% that only goes to closing costs, like the expenses that you have to pay to the government. And that 2.4% is broken down into 1.5% of transfer taxes plus a 0.9% in stamps and registry fees. That's the minimum that you will always have to pay. And there, after that, it comes whatever the attorney wants to charge for it, or is willing to charge for it according to the services or the additional services that he offers. Something that you must know is that there's a minimum that, as in notary publics, we have to charge for a title transfer deed. That minimum is around 1%. Attorneys, for example, at our firm, we charge a little bit more than that 1%, but we throw in a free incorporation of a limited liability company or the company that you need. We also offer the services of opening new bank accounts, activating the company before the tax ministry if it's needed. Also, we can help you with, we offer an additional service that we call the company maintenance services. And it's basically a service that you pay on an annual basis, and we make sure that your company is kept in full compliance throughout the year, both with tax payments and filings that all the existing companies in Costa Rica need to file. We also offer assistance in that same fee, on payments for your property taxes, so on and so forth. So it all depends on the additional services that your attorney wants to charge or offer. But there's a minimum of 2.4%, as I mentioned at the beginning, plus a minimum of 1% that for the fees that we have to charge. So that equals 3.4% at a minimum.
Nope, fair enough. And what you're saying is true, where I came up with the 4% is true and conservative, because lawyers, attorneys are going to add on after that, where yours may be just a little over 4%, but you're including so much more.
Yeah, and it's not like we just close the door and say it is what it is. We put them the 1% as the minimum that we have to charge, and we include additional or optional services, and the client can just check the box, yes, I want this, I don't want this, and it will all add up to what the client actually wants. But it's not something that we push the client to hire. It's something that we always recommend to make the client's life easier. That's basically it.
Okay. Here's one, because we've just gone through it with our clients, with our property management company. And sometimes I have found that other property management companies, they may not know this, or they may not pass it on, or good law firms send out the information usually in December. Please keep in mind, Kevin and Mary, you have this coming up by January 15th, or this by January 30th, or this by March 15th, so on and so forth. So we're not blowing your mind with all these extra costs. There's going to be land taxes, correct? So can you explain to us really quick how often we need to pay land taxes, when, and how they're assessed?
Of course, the land taxes, you can pay them quarterly throughout the year, or you can just pay them in bulk at the beginning of the year in January. We always recommend paying them in bulk in January so that you don't have to be incurring in, international wire fees and so on and so forth. And then if you miss the day of payment at the end of the quarter, it's accruing interest, so on and so forth. The amount of property taxes that you have to pay is a 0.25% of the declared value before the local municipality. So every time you close on a property, the transfer deed gets registered before the public registry. And it should be the attorney's job to then register that change of ownership before the local municipality, who is the one in charge of collecting the real estate taxes on a yearly basis. Mm-hmm. And that change of ownership before the local municipality sets the fiscal value that they're going to charge you taxes over. So they're going to charge you 0.25% of that value that you bought your property for.
So let's do quick math on that. At $100,000 at land taxes, it's $250 per year. That's pretty darn low, guys. For any of you that are in the Northeast or in the eastern part of the United States, or in California or the northwestern part of the United States, you know that is ridiculously low. There's other taxes that you'll come across as well. You'll have your shareholders agreements. What else are you going to have at the end of the year? Shareholders, corporation taxes, but these are things that are actually fairly minimal. So go ahead.
A good ballpark, I would say, to maintain a company active in Costa Rica, just for the company itself, will be anywhere from $750 and $1,100
per annum.
That's per year, yeah, exactly. Additional from that, you just have to add the real estate taxes that we're just discussing. But that's a good ballpark to maintain a company active in Costa Rica.
Okay, so what we touched on in the beginning, or what you touched on, explaining more about your company, you also do residency. So you have, it's not just you, but you actually have an immigration lawyer within your firm, correct? Okay. I get the question from you guys all the time, Kevin, why are you and Mary permanent residents? There are certain reasons that we're permanent residents. One, our daughter was born here. We didn't do it. We applied and did everything way before that. What we see benefits in is our healthcare system here. It depends on where you go and what you do, and what municipality you may live in, whether or not they're better or worse. It's just like having a doctor or insurance in the United States. We actually, on top of that ourselves, pay for private healthcare. That'll be a whole nother video, and it'll blow your mind how inexpensive private healthcare is. Residency, is it worth it or is it not? That's also going to depend on you and your family and what you're looking to do. I used to tell people a long time ago, or maybe 2 years ago and before that, yeah, you want to do residency, but now with the laws changing that you can come and go every 6 months now, that's completely different. But then there's other benefits in purchasing property and having things shipped down here as well. But I'm not going to get into all of that. If you want to touch on any of it, that's fine. If not, you can just go ahead and either ask some questions in the comment section below or reach out to the company as well. Is there anything else you want to touch on with residency?
Yeah, I mean, residency, and I always like to be 100% honest with my
Mhm.
clients. And lately, I think I've been more than honest with them on telling them the truth about applying for the residency in Costa Rica. There's many people applying for the residency since the pandemic in Costa Rica, and it's really not a extremely easy process as everybody says it is. It's something that you have to pay for and wait a certain period of time to get the residency approved. It's important to bear in mind that it's not like you just apply for the residency and then you just have it in a term of a year. You first have to apply for the temporary residency, reapply for the temporary residency, the renewal, and then for the permanent residency. So it's a lot. It's you're in for the long run if you want to apply for the residency. Many people that want to apply for the residency, their main attractive, believe it or not, is just skipping the foreigners line at the airport.
Yeah,
And
and if that's the case, it ain't worth it. Go through the line.
it's that's believe it or not, that's one of the most like frequently
Mhm.
asked reasons, or decided this reasons for or the decision to make the reasons to make the decision to apply for the residency. And it's just it's on you if you want to do it or not. There's no extremely additional and super interesting benefits for applying for the residency, other than what Kevin said, that it's a really good reason why, and it's healthcare.
Mhm.
Many people complain about the healthcare in Costa Rica, but I've been witness on family stuff about the healthcare in Costa Rica, and we have a really good healthcare in Costa
Mhm.
Rica. So
Yeah.
that will be my main comments for that topic in specific.
Well, before we go, how do people get a hold of you?
Of course, they can reach out to me through LinkedIn, through WhatsApp, or through email. I think Kevin's gonna share my personal information with you, or you can log into www.uniquelb.com and you can find us there.
Yeah, you would have seen everything on the screen, but if you missed it, go ahead down in the description area below. Everything that we're talking about, how to get a hold of Fredrick, myself, or their law firm will be, again, down in the description area below. Thank you so much for your time, efforts, and you can close property anywhere in the country. So if we have people reaching out to us, and if they're not buying in Jaco, they can reach out to you to help you, or for you to help them out if they're buying in Guanacaste, which you have offices in Guanacaste as well.
Yes, of course. And even if you have your personal attorney or you're gonna hire somebody else, feel free to reach out. We can always jump on a quick call and address some questions. If you decide to work with me, great. If not, that's great as well. I helped you out, and looking forward to receiving some questions.
Fredrick, ULB, Kevin Walters, Costa Rica Investment Properties. Thanks so much.